Hello and welcome to the Brazilian BA Guest. We are inviting different experts here to talk about different subjects that are on the interest of the business analysis practitioner. For today, we are going to talk about mindfulness with my friend from Australia, Kathy Berkidge. Hello, Kathy. Thank you for coming.
So great to be here, Fabricio. Happy New Year.
Oh, and Happy New Year for you too. Thank you for coming. Kathy, I do have a question for you today about mindfulness and business analysts. How can mindfulness help a business analyst?
Oh, what a great question. And thank you for having me. And I'm really keen to talk about this with you and hopefully spark some interest with some other BAs in the community. So, I've been practicing mindfulness for more than 20 years, and it has been one of the most important skills that I think I've been able to use during my business analysis activities. I'm going to give you three kind of little reasons of why I think mindfulness can help business analysis. The first one is probably one of the most important ones for business analysis and business analysts, I should say. Our job is to elicit requirements and do analysis of those requirements. Now, to elicit requirements, it takes and to ask a lot of questions, we need to remain curious. We need to remain open minded. We need to look deeper and really dig into the detail of why something is required, why something is happening. The problem we all face is sometimes we think we know something. And when we think we know, we don't ask any more questions and we make assumptions. We use our previous judgments and experience to guide us rather than being open to discovering something new, something different, something we may not have expected. So when we think we know these things, we just, oh, yeah, I know it, write it down, and we don't dig deeper. So we fail to miss the underlying problem or the underlying cause of why something is happening with our requirements, with our systems, with our processes. So mindfulness helps us stay open. Mindfulness helps us to identify whether we are making those presumptions and those perceptions in our mind are clouding what we're seeing and not seeing things clearly and objectively. So that's our first big reason.
I want to list the other two, but I want to give a step back and help. And I want your help to understand something. We told about mindfulness as a skill, an important skill for a business analyst, and I wonder if you could define mindfulness for those who are not very used, because people can think about mindfulness as a technique or mindfulness, I don't know, a session, a therapy, or how can you define or how do you define mindfulness?
Thank you. And it's a great thing to review because I did jump in there. So, mindfulness is often associated with all sorts of religious things and people sitting cross legged for hours on a mat. That is just one idea about mindfulness. And since in all my studies, I think that there's many ideas and definitions out there, but it's definitely a skill that can be learned and improved on with practice. So, simply put, mindfulness is just simple awareness. And when we think about awareness, it's about being aware of what's happening inside our own mind. What are we thinking? What are we assuming? What are we judging? What's that inner voice saying to us? So it's an awareness of what's happening inside ourselves, and from that point of awareness, we can then better um, uh, not control, but decide. Well, do I listen to that inner voice, or do I silence it to become more objective? Or do I think this assumption about something is happening? Is it true or is it not? And we can learn to push it aside. So, from this point of awareness, we are better able to be more clear and more considered and not let that all those things that are going on in our mind cloud the way we see the world and how we see things. So that's the first part, inner awareness.
Yeah, and awareness and being conscious about what's going on in your mind, and that comes for your first tip. That is being curious and trying to go deeper and not just figuring out something you're assuming as true, but you haven't studied or researched it deeper. Nice. I'm now interested about those other uh,
And
two
that
ideas you have to bring.
And the awareness part, when we think of mindfulness as simple awareness, it's awareness and dropping those perceptions, dropping those judgments, remaining more open. But it's inner awareness, but it's also outer awareness. So when we are thinking about awareness, we can be more aware of what's happening with our stakeholders. We can be more aware of what's happening in our workshops, in our meetings. We can be more aware and more open to learning from outside as well. So it's an inner awareness and an outer awareness. So both of these help us to be more objective and open, which is what's absolutely critical as a BA, because we need to be objective, we need to be neutral, we need to come at our requirements in a way that we are really truly wanting to dig to the very root of all our problems. So that awareness helps us to understand if we are having clouded judgments, so we can remove them and kind of open our eyes to seeing things fresh as if we're seeing things for the first time, like a child with that kind of curiosity of, oh, I've never seen this before. I want to learn more, because that's what the child mind is like. They've never seen something, so they ask a million questions. We want to dig into that inner child mind so we see things as if we've never seen it before and it's the most interesting thing in the world. So that's the first part of why I think mindfulness is so important.
Could I say that, as you said, some people think about mindfulness as something religious because it's related to some rituals, like someone closing their eyes, trying to breathe and think of nothing or think about their breath. Those are techniques to develop this awareness. So those are not the mindfulness in itself, but they're techniques to develop your skill of mindfulness. Is that correct?
You have it exactly right, Fabrizio. When we think about the way that we practice mindfulness, there's two major ways. The first one is what we call informal mindfulness, which is being aware in our day to day, moment by moment experience. So, as we are going through our day, as we're talking with people, as things are unfolding, we can remain aware of what's happening inside and around us. But that takes practice, because so often we're lost in our own mind, we're lost in our own thoughts, we're lost in our own inner voice. So we need to kind of snap out of it and come to and kind of step back and clear our minds and say, what's really happening here? We call it the check in with the brain. What's going on in my mind? Where's my focus? Where's my attention? Where should it be? What's going on in there? So that moment by moment mindfulness is what I'm speaking about. That's so critical for BAs to have. But that mindfulness, that informal mindfulness, is strengthened by formal mindfulness practice, which most people would recall or understand to be meditation. So, meditation is a deliberate stepping away from our current world around us and going inside, and sitting still, watching our mind, watching our breath. Perhaps that's one practice of meditation. Meditation is not all religious. In fact, we informally say that there's at least 84,000 different ways to meditate. So there's not just one, oh, you must sit cross legged on a cushion and focus on your breath. There are so many other ways. And these days, there's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of research, but done by Berkeley in California, Yale in the US. And there are now more than 5,000 studies and formally peer reviewed papers on the benefits of meditation and mindfulness practice and how it can reduce stress, actually deal with better creativity, for example, and certainly helps us be a more happier, more complete person. So, mindfulness informally is what we want, but that practice is strengthened by our formal meditation practice. A bit like going to the gym. When we go to the gym, we build up our muscles. Well, meditation helps us build up our mindfulness muscles so we can be more mindful in our
I,
day-to-day
I
world.
was just thinking about the same example. I went this morning to the physiotherapist because I have my backs are hurting a little bit from being sit all day here in this computer, and so I have to do physiotherapy so I can have a better position of my body. So, but for my body to be well positioned, I have to do some exercises, and that's how meditation probably works for my mind. So it's some exercises that when I have the situation to use my mind, it's already trained. Kathy, sorry if I had to bring you back to the basics here because I'm learning a lot. But please come back to the business analyst and the other two ways you were going to describe how can mindfulness help them in their day-to-day job.
Fantastic. Yes, and definitely great to understand what it is first. So, the first one we already covered is that awareness and understanding if our assumptions and presumptions are clouding our judgment. So, that's really important so we can remain open and curious. The next one is about our attention. When we're talking our business analysis, we are most commonly talking to other people. And when we're talking to the other people, it shouldn't be that we're doing a lot of talking. We should be doing more listening. We're asking them questions, and we should be tuning in to really listen and be present with them so we can focus on what they're saying and clearly. But a big problem today, more so than ever, I think, is that we're easily distracted. Our phones, emails, even our own thoughts distract us. So whilst we're sitting with our stakeholder, they might be explaining something really important, but we might be thinking about what's happening later in the day, or what happened previously, or what are our plans? What's happening next? Maybe we might be thinking, oh, this person, I've heard all this before. I wish they'd just get to the point. And all of these inner and outer distractions are actually making it so we're not truly listening. We're not present with our stakeholders. What mindfulness can do is snap us back and say, hang on, where's my attention? Is it with this person or am I distracted? So mindfulness enables us to better identify when our attention has been distracted somewhere else and snap us back so we can focus on what we need. Now, I've talked about it in terms of being present with our stakeholders, but attention is, really important when we're listening, but it can be also the attention that we need to just do our own work at our own desks when we are perhaps writing requirements or doing other BA type of practices. It helps us identify if we're distracted so we don't stay distracted, because the problem with distractions is we can just lose days, hours, minutes just off la la land, and we kind of don't even realize we've been distracted sometimes. So that mindfulness practice helps us identify when our attention is not where we want it to be so we can stay focused. So that's a really important skill for BAs and probably anybody really, but
Yeah.
it's important especially because I think from that listening, if we're going to ask a lot of questions, being curious, well, we better be prepared to listen and listen with that presence.
Right. So question your assumptions first of all, and trying to be open to understand, be prepared to listen and with attention, and not losing your focus, and being able to keep your focus on what you're doing. Not sometimes you're trying to do a lot of things at the same time and and lose what we are doing. Very good. I like that, and those suggestions seems very powerful. Kathy, if people wants to know more about mindfulness and their relationship with mindset and mindfulness and business analysis, how can they find you?
Well, I am working on a book that I hope will be finished at some point this year. This is my major goal. It was my goal last year, but a few things came up. But hopefully, my book will be done. But until then, the best way to find out what I'm up to and the posts and articles that I write regularly is via LinkedIn. And I know the information we put there to my LinkedIn profile. If you
It's going to
follow
be
me,
here on the description of this video. If someone is looking, just click on the description.
perfect. Down there. So certainly I do a lot of activity on LinkedIn, and you can find out about workshops, references, all sorts of links I post about mindfulness, and of course business analysis and agile, because I do a little bit of agile stuff as well. I also have a website, mindatworkconsulting.com.au. That also you'll find out my links, what I'm doing, courses and workshops, as well as some reference information about mindfulness. There is so much great material out there about mindfulness, and I do include that in some of my reference material as well.
Kathy, I learned a lot, and I would like to thank you very much for coming here today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and look forward to seeing you at BBC.
Yes, we are going to see. We are going to be together there. See you.
Yes.